America's healthcare advocate, Cary Hall.
Hello, America. Welcome to America's Healthcare Advocate Show, broadcasting coast to coast across the USA. Thanks to all of you in our listening audience. 233, I think, stations across the country. Our newest one, we keep adding these stations in Texas. It's really quite amazing. KRFE AM and FM. That's KRFE AM and FM 95.9 in Lubbock, Texas. So we want to thank Anthony Garza, the program director there, for putting us on. We're very happy to be on the air in Lubbock and welcome you to the America's Healthcare Advocate family. Thank you very much for putting us on the air and letting us be part of your audience in Lubbock, Texas. My producer today is Mr. Sean Floyd. My other producer today, the man behind the cameras, is Dave Thiessen. All these shows are posted on 14 podcast platforms and YouTube, as well as heard across the country on our 200, I think again, it's 233. Isn't that about right, Dave?
Yes.
Okay. 233 affiliates now. We keep adding on. I'm very happy to say that. If you are chronologically challenged and looking for Medicare and help with Medicare insurance of any kind, you can call the lovely Carol Lee Steele at 877-385-2224. That's RPS Benefits by Design. They help people all over the country. She is happy to help you. If you're trying to figure out the alphabet soup of Medicare, give her a call, 877-385-2224. If you're aging into Medicare or need help, maybe you qualify for one of those special needs programs. You won't know that if you don't talk to somebody that's an expert. She is an expert. Also, if you are an employer struggling with the cost of health insurance for your employees and you want some better solutions, Maria Allers at RPS Benefits by Design can help you with that. She just put together a fabulous plan for a 125 life group the other day and saved them a significant amount of money. Again, 877-385-2224. She is happy to help you. All right, this is a little unusual show today. We've done something like this a couple of times. Joining me in studio today is Cal Hayden. He is the sheriff of the Johnson County Sheriff's Department. And you may be wondering, what's that got to do with health care? It's got a lot to do with our health of our communities, okay? And that's why he's here today. You know, we live in this bubble. You know, here in Johnson County, we're in one of the wealthiest counties in the country. I think we're number 4 and number 5 in terms of wealth as a county. The city of Overland Park, which I live in and is the largest city in Johnson County, is the number 2 rated happiest place in the country to live. Number 2, up from number 4 last year. So we're in this bubble where, you know, we've got a great community here. We have a great sheriff's department, great police departments in Overland Park, Lenexa, you know, some of the other areas in and around Johnson County. But there's a lot under the surface that we don't see. So I invited Sheriff Cal Hayden to come on the show. Welcome to the show, Sheriff.
Thank you.
Very happy to have you here today. And we're going to talk about some of that. I want to make you aware of some of the things that are happening that we're not aware of. They're kind of under the surface, but they are a very significant issue in today's world that we need to be aware of. Sheriff Hayden is proven. He is tested. He's got extensive experience as a Johnson County Sheriff. He's been the Johnson County Sheriff since 2017. Sheriff Hayden always called Kansas home. He grew up in DeSoto, Kansas, served in the United States Army Reserves, the 159th Police Unit, and 406th Engineer Battalion from 1974 to 1980. He served in the United States Coast Guard Reserves from 86 to 90 and achieving the rank of Petty Officer in the Summit County Sheriff's Department. He has served in the Johnson County Sheriff's Office for 36 years. He's got a little experience, you might say. So let's just kind of dive in, Sheriff.
Great.
So, you know, as I open this up, you and I talked a little bit before we went on the air here. So we're in the I-35 corridor here, okay? But before we get to that, and that's one of the first things we're going to talk about, is let's just talk about your department. How big is the Johnson County Sheriff's Department? How much of an area does it cover? Okay, and your responsibilities in the county of Johnson County, Sheriff?
Great. Johnson County, our sheriff's office is the largest in the state of Kansas. We're slated for 504 deputies. All of our officers are certified law enforcement officers. And we've got another 200 employees that are just as important as anybody wearing a badge that take care of all of our administrative, and we've got some civilian staff in our jail. And a lot of people don't even know we exist in Johnson County. It's interesting. Because when I ran for sheriff, I would be out knocking on doors up here in Overland Park and tell people you're running for sheriff, and they'd say, "Do you work for the city?"
That's really funny. I got to tell you a story. we moved out of Kansas City, out of Brookside, out to 179th Street, which is out by out by the Arboretum, in a new development out there called Chapel Hill. Right. And I saw these black cars going up and down 179th Street, and they were police cars. I'm like, what police department is that? Oh, that's the Johnson County Sheriff's Department, and they patrol our complex from time to time. But they have a heavy presence on 178th Run, and I'm thrilled to see it. It's a comfort to us to know, but I didn't know. So to your point, I did not know there was a Johnson County Sheriff's Department either. I thought it was the Overland Park Police Department. That was it. But you've got 504 deputies and 200. That's 700 people. This is a big department.
Oh, it is. It is. It's and it's interesting because, and I really like the idea that you don't need us in your business, and a lot of people don't notice us until you need us in your business.
Oh, yeah.
And we play it pretty low key, and unless you need us, we're not going to be around. We do. You're down there by a school, so we patrol our schools and
there's
keep
two
a close eye on those
down there. Yep.
Absolutely. We're and we patrol all the rural areas. We are also civil papers and any court documents that need to be served. Our officers do that, and those are uniformed officers. We've got a crime lab, probably one of the greatest crime labs in the country. Really, really good. We also got patrol, school resource officers, court security, investigators. We've got a drug task force. We're doing a lot of
we're going to talk about that.
Oh, it's huge. It's huge. We've got a lot of full service things that we do. We run 2 jails. I think we run really good jails. Everywhere I've been, they're pretty much second to none, and pretty proud of them. So come out, take a look at us, because we love to show it off.
Well, it's just great to learn more about what you do and how you do it, and how important law enforcement is to, again, I talked about, we live in this great community. There's a reason for that. Okay, I mean, look, and I'm broadcasting this show across the country because I want everybody, especially if you happen to live in one of these suburban communities, to understand that we're not immune from what goes on. Now, here, if you're not familiar with Kansas City, Kansas and Missouri are divided by a street called State Line. I mentioned earlier that I had moved out of Kansas City over to Overland Park. One of the reasons why I moved was because of the crime and the issues in the city of Kansas City, which has one of the highest homicide rates in the country, along with a whole host of other little issues that go along with that. So the contrast couldn't be greater between Jackson County, which is the county that encompasses Kansas City, and Johnson County, which encompasses Overland Park, which is the city I live in. Mm-hmm. So, and we'll talk a little bit about that, but let's go back to this topic that I just mentioned early coming on, and that is this I-35 corridor. Why is that important, and what does that mean? What is the I-35 corridor? And in the next segment, we'll get into some more detail, but what is that, and why is that important, Sheriff?
Well, Kansas City is halfway to everywhere. We're right in the middle of the country. So anywhere you go, you're going to go through Kansas City one way or another. I-35 is the same thing. All the way to Texas, it is an artery. And it's an artery for trucking, transportation, all the way from Canada to Texas.
And Mexico, I would assume.
And Mexico, too. Go straight down to Mexico. So we get a lot of activity coming up because of that, especially now with the border the way it is and some of the things going on. We're seeing a lot of nefarious activity centered around I-35.
So talk about when you say nefarious activity, and I-35 is being used as a corridor, I assume, for this activity to move through.
What we're seeing is human trafficking, very prolific through there. We're seeing drug traffic. Anything you can think of that's illegal where things need to be transported, you see those things coming down I-35.
We're going to go to break here in a few minutes, but in about a minute or so. But I need to ask you: have you seen an uptick on that with this current situation at the border?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so there is a significant increase?
There is, and we've got an increase in our custody levels in our jails. We've got citizens from everywhere. I'll read you a list.
Okay, give me some idea of from everywhere.
Well, I get a report every day. We try to keep track of what's going on because of prosecutions and and who's coming into our county.
Okay, so let's do this. We're coming up on the break. Look,
Okay.
when we come back from the break, I want you to go through that. I want people to hear this.
Well, it's
'Cause
amazing.
like I said, people, I want you to understand something. You're not immune to this if you live in Illinois or you live in Arizona or you live in Missouri or Nebraska. It doesn't really matter. The purpose of my doing this show today is to highlight these issues that we're dealing with in our communities and how they affect the health of our communities. We'll be right back after the break. You're listening to America's Healthcare Advocate, broadcasting here on the HI Radio Network, coast to coast, across the USA. Stay tuned. The sheriff's here today.
The Golden Rule. Treat others as you want to be treated. I'm Steve Keeker, and this is one of the founding principles of my firm, Senior Care Consulting. Since 2002, our value statement has included honor our mother and father, respect our elders, care for those in need, and treat your family as our own. We've been honored to help hundreds of families make one of the most difficult decisions they could ever make, serving them in their greatest time of need. If you're looking for someone who can provide you experienced and objective guidance when searching for a senior care community, reach out today and discover the services of Senior Care Consulting at 913-945-2800, 913-945-2800. Know your options and choose with care at seniorcareconsulting.com.
Welcome back. You're listening to America's Healthcare Advocate Show, broadcasting coast to coast across the USA here on the HIA Radio Network. You can find out more about us by going to the website, americashealthcareadvocate.com. Also, we're posted on 14 podcast platforms, so if it's out there, we're probably on it. Okay, and our YouTube following, I think it's up to like 270-some thousand downloads. So we know you're watching, we know you're listening, and we appreciate all of you out there throughout the country. Joining me in studio today, Sheriff Cal Hayden from the Johnson County Sheriff's Department. You know, they're a pretty big department, 504 officers, 200 civilian employees. I thought it'd be kind of interesting to have him on today. I really am focusing today on what we see in suburban communities and why we have a tendency to think those problems that we see oftentimes on the news and read in newspapers, assuming you read a newspaper still, are focused only on the cities. They're not. They're in our communities too, and that's the purpose of doing this show today, talking about the health of our communities and how that affects us. You know, I've got 6 grandchildren, our children and grandchildren, so that's the purpose of this show today. So you mentioned the I-35 corridor. We've got people coming in here. I asked you if the current situation at the border with the flood of migrants coming into the country is impacting the sex traffic and the drug traffic and all that. You said yes. And then you said, we've got a lot of people in our jails, and you're going to tell us where some of these folks in our jails are from, and they're not from Boise, Idaho.
No, they're not.
Okay, so where are they from?
And a lot of people don't know this. So it's an interesting concept of what's coming up through our border. We got a parole violation out of Russia.
Russia. Okay.
Yeah. Ag robbery out of Honduras, domestic battery from Kenya, murder in first degree from India, another Kenya, Canada, the Philippines, ag arson, Guatemala, Azerbaijan, assault. It goes on and on. Germany, Honduras, Kenya, Argentina, Colombia, Venezuela, Italy. You name it, we've got people here.
You know, I'm a pretty informed guy. I read 3 newspapers on a daily basis. Okay, there are a number of websites that I go through because of this radio show and all the rest of it, and that floors me. I had no idea.
Yeah,
that really here in Johnson County in our jail. Okay. In our our suburban community here, we've got people in jail from all these places.
All over the world.
So if you think this isn't affecting you, I don't care where you are. If you're in Boise, Idaho, you know, I made a joke earlier, but if you're in, you know, Omaha, Nebraska, or you're in Peoria, Illinois, or wherever you may be, if you think this is an issue in Minnesota or whatever the case is, guess what? It's an issue. And that's why we're talking about today. Yeah. So they're coming into this country. They're not here legally, obviously, okay, and they're committing crimes.
Right.
Now we hear when you hear people try to talk about this, they're branded as xenophobic. Name the number of phobias, whatever they are, okay, because you're bringing up, but this is, the point I'm making here is regardless, I don't care whether you're Republican, Democrat, Independent, it doesn't really matter. The point is, this is reality, is what we're saying, Sheriff.
Yes.
This is reality. This
is
happening right now in communities across the country. Nobody's immune from this.
Nobody is. And the thing is a lot of them have different cultures. And in one culture, they're very controlling of a wife. They'll end up here in domestic battery charge. We don't tolerate that here. And all we do is, we're not looking for illegal people. We're looking for criminals and people that committed crimes. And most of them are going to be here for long term, because once they're convicted of a crime, even if they get deported, that won't be until after they've served their sentence. So it's very costly.
Stop for a second. So they commit an armed robbery. You've got one in here for murder from India.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If and when that one serves the sentence and doesn't get, life or whatever the case may be, he cannot be deported out of. I didn't know this. This is amazing what we're learning. ICE cannot come in here and deport him and take him back to his country until after he serves the sentence.
Yes.
So they're going to go to Lansing prison, okay, or Leavenworth, whatever one it is you send them to.
Exactly.
Okay, and that's where they're going to be until they finish serving their sentence.
Yes. Yep. It's amazing.
So I'm guessing if people that are committing murders here, robberies here from Russia, do we ever extradite these people to these other countries because they're wanted there for the same kinds of crimes?
Well, a lot of times they are. A lot of times they've got criminal charges in the other countries. And that's why they deport them. They just take them back to their country. It doesn't even have to be an extradition. If they're deported, they go back and they'll face the charges they've got there.
But you don't. If they want an extradition from you, do you cooperate with that, or they have to serve their sentence in Kansas?
They have to serve their sentence in Kansas.
You don't want to come through Kansas, people. Just to tell you right now, okay? Because there's no tolerance for this here, and I don't know what it's like in the rest of the country, but clearly, obviously. In Kansas, this is this is not being tolerated. So that's amazing to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I consider myself a pretty well-informed guy. The amount of news that I consume, but my wife wishes I didn't consume nearly as much.
I understand.
Like yesterday, she asked me, if you're going to watch the news, I'm just going to stay in the other. I'm going to do something else for the time being. But having said that, you think you know what's going on. In reality, this is going on, and this is not being talked about by anybody. I don't see this out there being talked about.
It's not, and our inmates of foreign birth have increased probably twofold. Used to be we had a few, but not from. I mean, this is literally from all over the world.
Yeah, I guess if we're getting it from India and Nigeria and Russia, that's a pretty good. Azerbaijan. Yeah. I mean, that's a pretty remarkable mix.
It really is. It really is.
Yeah. So So this is another question. Do you cooperate with ICE if ICE wants to come in? I know a lot of counties and cities and areas don't. Does Kansas and Johnson County cooperate?
Absolutely, we do.
Okay.
We have. When I first got elected, it was during the transition with presidents, and ICE didn't do hardly any deportations. So they were biting at the bit to just do their jobs. They were held back. They were frustrated. Then again, everybody, some of our Hispanic community was really worried that they were going to be rounded up at church and things. So we met with ICE and we talked with them and said, look, none of us have got time to go out and round people up, and that's not what we do anyway. We're just looking for bad guys, and that's what ICE did, and that's what they do. They are ready, willing to go. They're working hard if they're allowed to.
So and again, the focus there when cooperating with them is on criminals, people that are bad guys, people that are committing crimes.
They don't have time. We don't have time for anything else.
Yeah, so we're not pulling people out of churches and out of restaurants because they're here from Mexico or Guatemala. That's
not going to happen.
That's not how this works.
They've got rights, and we're going to protect those too.
Okay, that's yeah. I hope everybody's hearing this and understanding this. That we see oftentimes today's media, law enforcement is painted with the pictures. I mentioned earlier, I was surprised, and I'll make this point now as we go to break here in a minute. When we had the shooting here in Kansas City at the Super Bowl parade and at the end of the facility. The number of politicians who typically are not pro-law enforcement that came out and lauded the departments, and Johnson County Sheriff's Department was there for running toward the gunfire. Okay, so this is part of what we don't appreciate in this country sometimes is the men and women that wear that badge and put their life on the line every day so that we can live in our communities safely and soundly. We'll be right back after the break. You're listening to America's Healthcare Advocate, broadcasting here on the HIA Radio Network, coast to coast across the USA. Welcome back. You're listening to America's Healthcare Advocate Show, broadcasting coast to coast across the USA here on the HIA Radio Network. You can learn more about us by going to the website, americashealthcareadvocate.com. Also, the podcast platforms, I'm going to tell you which ones they are. We're on Amazon Music, Odyssey, Overcast, Pandora, RSS Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, iTunes Podcasts, Spreaker, SoundCloud, Rumble, Pocket Cast, Apple, and Google Podcasts. I think that's all of them. We may have added one more, iHeart Podcast, I'm not sure, but we're on almost every one that's out there. So if you're looking for us on the podcast platforms, you can certainly find us also on the YouTube channel. Also, the sheriff's running for another term here in Johnson County. We certainly hope he gets reelected based on the job that he's done and is currently doing. You can go to the website, CalvinHayden4Sheriff.com. Calvin Hayden, Hayden, for sheriff.com if you want to get involved in his campaign and help with what he's doing here in Johnson County. So let's go back to I-35 for a minute. So let's talk about fentanyl. There's an enormous amount of discussion going on in between the federal government and state governments and everything that's going on the border, where the majority of this is coming over. At least that's what I understand. And this fentanyl, is this fentanyl coming up through the I-35 corridor and then being dispersed out into the communities?
Yes, and if it's not shipped, it's being mailed. We're finding a lot in the mail.
They're mailing it.
Mailing it. And UPS, FedEx, United States Mail. We take our dogs in and we'll run them up and down the lines and find lots of fentanyl. Also, they're trucking it in. Our officers will make stops on I-35. We've got cartel members here doing it. They're getting it any way they can. We have cartel members
here?
Absolutely.
In Johnson County?
Yes.
This is amazing.
Well, it's a great place to live.
Yeah, I guess it is, for not just for those of us that are law-abiding citizens, but others as well. So, and this stuff's being manufactured in Mexico and brought up here?
For the most part, yes. The precursors for the drugs are being shipped to Mexico from China. So it's very easy for them.
The chemicals that are being used to make this stuff?
Yes. And they will press them into pills. And it's not just, we call them M30s. It's a blue pill that a lot of people see it and think that's fentanyl. They're not. They're putting it in anything. They're putting it in marijuana. They're putting it in anything they can get it in. We had a young man, and this is tragic, 17-year-old young man. They find him dead. Parents found him dead at his desk. Good kid, no criminal history, good athlete, just a normal kid. Find him dead on his desk and had no idea what happened to him. Turns out he and a friend bought an Adderall pill online, broke it in half. He takes half, the other kid takes half, and their son dies. That's not an overdose, that's a poisoning.
I hope this is why I'm doing this today. I've got 6 grandkids, okay? And this is why I'm doing this. You need to be aware of this, what's going on. So these kids went online. They bought Adderall because it helps. A lot of kids in college use it for studying and all the rest of it. It's a big deal in schools. And he thought he was buying Adderall, and he took half of one pill, and it killed him.
Yeah. It's just terrible.
That's tragic. And these websites are available. These kids can go buy off these websites wherever they may be.
If they don't verify who it is, they're out to make money from anybody and anywhere they can.
And this stuff's being shipped all over the country?
All over the country. Our dogs, we typically take off about 20,000 pills. And we're finding, and DEA will tell you, 1 in 6 will kill you. And the only thing that stops it is Narcan. We all
which
carry
everybody
Narcan.
carries Narcan now.
And it's been a gift. And so we have no way of knowing how many deaths have been prevented with Narcan, but we know there's hundreds of thousands in the United States. It's approaching COVID numbers.
If this doesn't scare the hell out of you, I don't know what would. Okay, you need to keep this in mind when you're listening to all this nonsense about law enforcement and just all the noise that's out there. This is actually going on. They don't care if you're a Republican, a Democrat, an independent, libertarian. They don't care what you are. Okay, they don't care what race you are, what political party you are. They're poisoning our kids and they're poisoning people in this country. And if you doubt that, you look and see what's going on in places like San Francisco, Los Angeles. I just have a friend that came back from San Francisco, who has lived there most of his life and has moved out a number of years ago, lives here in Overland Park. He said it was worse than he couldn't even imagine how bad it was. It's that bad. Okay, and this is unfortunately out of control. But again, I'm focused on what's going on in suburban communities here and what's happening with us. So this fentanyl thing then is basically what you're saying is out of control.
It is.
And we're not doing a damn thing to stop it from coming in here from China. Nobody's getting the Chinese to stop shipping this stuff because they're poisoning Americans and they know it.
Right.
And they're happy to do it.
Yes. And there's been some movements out of Washington trying to stop the chemicals from coming in.
It's a lot of talk.
It's all talk, yes.
Okay, so now we're going to shift gears, okay? We're going to talk about legal marijuana, and I'm going to show you some pictures here. And while I'm showing you these pictures, I'm going to let the sheriff explain to you what this is. So this is the first picture. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about these, Sheriff?
These are a spin-off of Fruit Loops cereal, and this is cereal that's infused with a large amount of THC.
Keep going.
This one is
chocolate
bar. It's infused with THC.
And this one is?
This one's Cocoa Puffs, a spin-off of Cocoa Puffs that are infused with more THC. And these doses of THC are massive.
And this one is really scary.
This is just candy and spin-offs of different candy that all of our kids would eat, and it's infused with THC.
And this is the part that's really going to make your hair stand up. This is not illegal. Explain this.
In states that approve marijuana, a lot of people don't understand that it also includes the edibles. And the edibles are very dangerous for kids, especially because if it's in a cookie or a brownie or any of this candy that they would normally eat and they eat a handful of it, it has a terrible effect on some of the kids. Your ERs will be loaded with kids that have psychosis or in some cases just dying. And there's levels of this that can kill you.
Okay, so explain that. You're talking about THC levels.
Right.
So while we were on break there, we were talking about back in the day when I was growing up and when Sheriff was growing up, the typical stuff in marijuana was about 6% THC. Talk about what is it in things like these candies that we're looking at?
It'd probably be about 1,000 milligrams for each piece of candy. It's
1,000 milligrams.
Concentrated, yes. It's crazy. It's crazy the amount they can put in there. And what happens is, and we were talking about this, is there are grow operations, and a lot of them are in Oklahoma right now. They're fighting it like crazy, where they are buying farms out for a lot of money, and it's Chinese gangs are running these. When I talked to a sheriff down there, he told me he had Chinese gangs in Oklahoma City. I just couldn't believe it. But they are running marijuana grow operations, huge ones, and they high grade 30% marijuana. They package it up, send it to the East Coast where these manufacturers are manufacturing anything they can with high amounts of THC in them.
This is what I'm talking about. It is hard to imagine what is going on here and the level of this. And this is being, so what's happening is, so here we are back in Kansas and Missouri. We have a street that divides the two states, right? It's legal in Missouri. So all these things that I just showed you, these pictures, and I've got a stack of about 30 of them here, all of these products can be bought in Kansas City at the marijuana grow shops that we have throughout Kansas City Metro, Jackson County, okay? The problem is they're being purchased by adults,
right,
and then they're being brought over here, and they're being sold to kids.
Right.
Typically high school kids, I'm guessing.
Yes.
And the high school kids are then taking them into the schools and reselling them to kids. And so you have a sophomore in high school buy these, and let's say he takes these candies home, and his 4-year-old little sister ingests one of these with 1,000 milligrams of THC, what happens?
She can end up in a hospital, or worse, or dying.
If you're lucky, end up
Yes.
in the hospital.
Yes.
So this is now you understand why I'm doing this today. Okay, this is what's going on, and this is scary as hell. This is legal. Colorado, Missouri, Oklahoma, go down the list of states that are letting this happen. This is legal, but it's not meant for children. This is stuff is supposed to be for adults. So you got to ask yourself a question: why are they packaging this to look like it's a child's candy? There's got to be a reason, because they're selling it and they know who's consuming it.
That's exactly right. And, and parents need to know, if you're looking at Nerds or any candy that's out there, the only way you can tell the difference is they'll do a little spin-off on the name, and it'll have a little mark in the corner that says THC in it. Very small, really hard to identify, but you need to look for those things with your kids, especially whatever they bring home.
That's why we're doing this today, and I hope you're learning from this today on what's going on. You're listening to America's Healthcare Advocate, broadcasting here on the HIA Radio Network, coast to coast across the USA. We'll be right back after the break. We're going to talk about sex trafficking now. It'll be an interesting segment. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're listening to America's Healthcare Advocate Show, broadcasting coast to coast across the USA. We've got Sheriff Cal Hayden in studio with us today. I hope you're as shocked by listening to this and seeing what I just showed you as I am, okay? And I want to show you a picture here of something. Sean Floyd, my producer here in studio, just brought this up. Look at this. Starbuds. Does that remind you of anything? Now, it's my understanding that, and they list all of the cities where they're located, they ship this stuff anywhere in the country. So all the things that I just showed you can be bought right here. This is just one of many, okay, and can be shipped across the country. So your kids can order this online. You heard Sheriff Hayden talk about that earlier, the kid that ordered the Adderall. Well, this isn't Adderall. This is supposed to be recreational marijuana, but you see what we have here. You know, like I said, this is. I thought I knew. Okay, I'm a pretty well-informed guy, but I had no idea the level that we're at. Let's switch gears, and this is probably even a more disturbing talk, if you can say that. Sex trafficking. I mentioned to you off air that, when I had my company, Benefits by Design, before we sold to Northwestern Mutual, our office was off 110th Street off Metcalf. Mm-hmm. Right next door to me was a Comfort Inn hotel. And we used to use that hotel to hold seminars where we taught people Medicare, Medicare Advantage, et cetera. And I found out one day, it was a police officer, and what are the Overland Park Police doing here? Turns out they were there because there was a sex trafficking operation using that hotel. That's 10 years ago.
Right.
This is now, go back to this border issue. It's wide open. Okay, this is what, and again, this is not political, people. This is just pure fact. How is that affecting the sex trafficking thing, and how important is the I-35 corridor here in Johnson County and other places around the country to allowing this to happen?
Much like you, I had no idea. I lived here in Johnson County my whole life, had no idea this was going on. I had a really great lady and gentleman come in that were worried about this to my office and asked me how many massage parlors were in Olathe, Kansas. Olathe is one of our communities, and it's about 100,000 people. And I don't know, a couple. She lays down this map and she said, there's 27. She goes, this is just Olathe. How many do you think you've got in your county? No idea. She goes, you got literally thousands. I said, well, what do you mean? Where are they? And she said, well, and once you start looking, you look at these smaller malls and some of them in the areas, you'll see massage.
Right. I see them. Yeah.
Those are where the human trafficking happens. We've made arrests in those. Olathe, we've done cooperative investigations with them. They're really hard to hit because it's like whack-a-mole. You hit one here and they'll turn up somewhere else. These, and this is cartel members that do this too, and Chinese gangs that are doing it. They move these girls around and they hold their visas over their heads. If they've got a work visa and a lot of them are Oriental, they're also coming through the border too. Anything to get over here, because the life they had was so bad, they think this is better. But they're everywhere. And if you drive around malls, if you live in a suburban area and you see that massage sign and the windows are blacked out, go in and see what they're dressed like. It is amazing. It's real easy to check.
So that's interesting. So these are not the chain massage parlors that you see that are legitimate. These are the ones in the strip malls, and you just heard the sheriff say that have the windows blacked out, etc. And most of these girls are Asian that are coming in here, okay, and they're being used to it. So how many of those girls are turned into prostitutes and the rest of it, or is that what they really are?
That's what they are. That's what they do with them. They're forced. It's and you know, it's interesting because then the term indentured servant comes up, which we know what that means.
Right.
But that's what they call these ladies, and we've even had faith-based groups try to go in and help these girls, and a lot of them don't.
They don't.
It's their life, and that's what they do.
So
it's tragic.
So how is that being stopped? Is it being stopped? And is that again part of this border issue that we're dealing with? You know,
it is, and interestingly enough, those legitimate massage parlors that you just mentioned, they're the ones that are really being hurt. So they are trying to get statutes in place that you have to be licensed to have a massage parlor. You have to have inspections and make sure that those things are happening. It is.
Right.
It is. And they're the ones that are upset about it. And they're not tired of getting hit on when they're trying to give somebody a legitimate massage. So they're helping us out in a big way.
Well, that's good to hear.
To try to do it. And we also get calls in and follow those up and do the best we can do.
So you see something, say something, you hear that all the time, here's your answer. If you happen to go into one of these places, you look at it and turn and go, whoa, this is not what I thought it was, call the sheriff's department and report it. We don't have a lot of time left. Okay. Child trafficking, child sex trafficking. How serious is that? What's going on?
It's unbelievable. I went to the border last year, and there are literally children coming across by themselves across the border, unaccompanied, whose parents paid the cartels their life savings to get their child into the United States. What happens to that child between the journey through Mexico or wherever they come from to the United States, no one knows. But you can guess a lot of the things that are happening.
What is happening to them when they come through here?
They come through here, they're trying to find someone. They don't know anybody. So they've got a number, usually, for someone to call, and somebody will come get them. But we don't know that person's not trafficking the child just as bad as they were coming across the border. So it is a terrible, heartless situation.
So so the pedophile that's preying on these children goes online and finds a source that then brings him one of ththese children, which they sexually abuse.
Cartel doesn't care where they go, as long as they get their money.
You know, it's shocking. It's sad. Okay,
it is.
Is there a light at the end of the tunnel on any of this stuff?
Got to close that border. Nothing good. The only people that I can see, and I don't want to be political here, but the only people that I can see that are really making out from this are some politicians who are turning a blind eye to it, and the cartels.
And that's the message. That's it.
Yeah.
And again, this is not political, people. The whole purpose of doing this today was just to bring to your attention. You live in one of these suburban communities like Overland Park, Johnson County, and you think everything is just fine. It's not. And you need to be aware of this. You need to think about these things. When you are voting, when you are involved in the process, this is what's going on. And when you can, if you see these kind of drugs and this kind of stuff being distributed, if you see something, as they say something. Thank you for doing this today.
Well, thank you.
I really appreciate this. I'd like to get you back on here again.
Oh, it's my honor.
Because it is important to understand what the people of law enforcement are doing. People like Sheriff Cal Hayden, who, by the way, is up for re-election, and we certainly hope that he is re-elected based on the job that he's doing here in Johnson County. Now I'll leave you with this thought from Albert Einstein. The one who follows the crowd will usually get no further than the crowd. The one who walks alone will find himself in places no one has ever been. Thank you for listening to America's Healthcare Advocate, broadcasting coast to coast across the USA here on the HIA Radio Network. Goodbye, America.